In this lesson, I'm going to offer you a slightly different approach to drawing the figure or a gesture. The approach we're going to look at now is more observational, and as a result kind of focuses more on shape and the establishment of simple parts and their design. The steps for me would be, first, what is the part that I'm working with? Once I do that, I try to understand and include what the gesture of that part is. So if I already have a set shape, is the shape going to be tilting, turning? And then the last is perspective. Perspective is going to be really simple. It's just going to be wrapping lines, because in this approach, my perspective would be with the addition of light and shadow. Usually my students that really dislike a rigid perspective buildup enjoy this approach. So first, here's my head. So the shape is this. The chin is pretty symmetrical, and the tilt is somewhat angled. And that's always, I think, the hard part, is that the part, the gesture, and then now the perspective take place almost like not simultaneously, but closer to it. Whereas the other approach, it's more delayed, right? You could separate those stages out a little bit more and think through them. So part 2, neck. Here I can look at the image and see that it's tilted and stretched and pinched maybe. So in this, I'm taking my part, and just to help you see this to begin, I'm thinking behind the head it would be doing something like this. So in that, this is my part, this is how I'm thinking of its gesture. Now let's put it behind. Remember, in this, what I'm looking to do in order to maintain the structural coherence between them is overlap. So there's a T that just kind of sits that neck behind, and then maybe we'll do a C over here. And I'm trying to move the head on top of the shape so that it starts to hide it a bit and create that quality of foreshortening, right? So one thing behind another. So just to help you try to see part, this is how I gave it a gesture, and now its perspective is going to be this, because it's still pushing forward even though I don't see all of it. Next, shoulder. So again, here's the part that I'm going to address, and we'll just try to explain that here so that when I do it to the figure, you're not like, what happened? So the part is the center line. This is the middle of that torso shape. And then my outsides. So that's how I'm thinking of this. My observation of it here is that the shoulders are tilted. There's a pinch and a stretch as a result. Pelvis is this way. So look, it's almost the same as the neck. Right? So you see I'm taking these shapes and just trying to bend them a little bit or adjust them to have that lean or that rotation. And then when I look for this line, that's much closer to that side. So I'd put this over here, and now that starts to turn it.
To learn all things gesture, check out Hampton's gesture course at proko.com/gesture. There's way more premium content that will help you overcome your gesture problems.
One thing we all know is let's just play around with the shape. And this is a way you can kind of get better with your shapes. What if I tilt it, pinch it, pinch and stretch it? I know my part can do this. And then I could be more specific with what's happening here. That's just what's happening in my head. But if I do it here, that's a tilt, that's the top of the shape. Sometimes I like to include these 3 points. Sometimes helps me see that quality of rotation. Now from those, I'm gonna make my pinch and stretch. So I think I have something like this. And then here, this is more of a C to me. Let's do more pinches here, and then pelvis. So basically this shape here. Where do I think it ends? A lot of the times what I'll do is I try to make these lines have a nicer flow by making them longer. I'm also, again, I'm not trying to match this. Like this line isn't the lat, this line isn't the oblique or the top of the pelvis. If you can, try to think of it in the same sense as the gesture that we started with. It is still an abstraction. I mean, clearly this is, because it's not your rib cage or pelvis. And you're just using this as a placeholder for what you can develop later. So here's the ending to that shape. And the ending to my shape is where I can then start to say, okay, now I'm gonna include my perspective. So that dips forward, and then this goes back. Front view, it's almost always rib cage goes forward, pelvis goes back. But just some context there. Okay, legs. I always feel like the leg in a front view looks like a B. So that would be my shape there. But what's more common is anytime the leg isn't in front or back, it looks like an S. Well, the reason it's S is because the knee is facing one or the other side instead of being straight forward. And then there's a lot of different ways we could do the shape, but hopefully you get the point. If I draw this leg, first thing I want to do is find my pelvis. I'm trying to set up my connection. So pelvis to leg. Leg looks like it starts here, and then maybe it starts here. All right, so that just gives me my connection, my relationship of one part to the last. It's not bad to go back and just think of the whole. Like here's relationship of neck to rib cage, pelvis mass, head to neck. All right, that's that double checking connection stage. Does everything wrap and overlap? And then this would be my operation for the leg. So that's side view. That means that if I were to just come at it with my formula, I know it's going to be an S, the silhouette of the leg. So what happened to that part? That's the first step. That part flexed. So that means it's going to be that stereotypical arrow or triangle shape, but it's still just a deviation of that S. So when I put it here, if it helps, you can think of your part. I'm still using S and C curves everywhere. So maybe an S on top, C on the bottom. This can be closer to your contour if you want. I still try to leave myself a little bit of room or I want a little grace so that I could still build out from this. And maybe just think of this as slightly inside of the outline of the body. And then back. So here's that front part of the leg, straight, back, S. And then here's my foot shape. I'll just bring that nice C curve down through the tendon ramp to the toes. And then on this side, so again, we could use that quality of cutting into, finding the pelvis, making a diagonal, if that helps you attach or tie this leg in. And then where's the width? How does it connect? Here, and then maybe here. So that's where the leg's going to begin from. That's an S. That looks like a 3/4 leg. So in this, I'd be pretty comfortable maybe just using this part, but angling it at a diagonal more. So it comes this way, back here. You probably need to bring this foot down or this foot up. So that's the only thing I'm noticing here is my leg got a little bit long on one side. Here would be one of the fallbacks or the kind of the negative aspects of this approach that I'm so used to in the other is you have to be a little bit more wary of, like where I'm lining things up. What I like so much about the other approach is that I get that gesture down all at once, and now I have a big proportional overview of the global positioning of the figure. I know everything that's going on. This one, sometimes I don't know if I have a part that's placed correctly because I like to do a lot of relational proportions. So in this one, I just had to kind of double check that, look at the leg, maybe drop that other leg down a little bit. But I'm comfortable with that design. So here's my wrapping lines. This goes back. And then maybe I need to bring that foot up a little bit. I still treat it though pretty light in terms of the lines being able to have some flexibility, movement, repositioning to them. So that could be done. And so for the arms, I use a similar approach, but with less specificity in terms of it being B or S. So arms for me look like an S or a triangle. So back view, I like to start with the shoulder blade. And then if the arm is extended, I usually see it as an S and let that flow into the hand. From the front, no axe handle, of course. So S if extended, if bent, I see more triangle or arrow shape. So here I'm going to do connection of the arm here, and then let's say like right in there somewhere. This would be, well, it could be the S, but I think it's probably better to draw this as the arrow or the C's. So I'm going to do two C curves for the upper arm. Remember the part, just as a reminder, since we did it to the other areas, the arm extended was a nice S curve down into the hand. The bent arm is always closer to being a triangle or a point like we did on the other leg. So I'm kind of more leaning towards that, but it's a little bit softer instead of it being that really aggressive angle there. And then direction of the arm, I like trying to pick up on a rhythm of the top of that rib cage when I can to help the arm flow a little bit more. I think I'm going to move this out some. So still double checking the connection. You can even break it down into the arm upper and lower. This is in front. This is behind. This is the width that I'm attaching to the prior part. And then I would always just let that flow into a type of hand shape. Just like you have a glove on or something is how I'm thinking about the hands for now. This part is raised clearly, so shoulders up. So I'm going to just treat the upper arm separate so I can foreshorten the other shapes. So it's doing this, but in perspective. So I have to understand that in 3D, but you could still tackle it as shapes. So maybe this is where I want the upper arm to end. That's its part. The next part is this wide. That's the forearm. And I'm going to build that in front as a shape that will just flow into the hand. So that's here. And then my hand shape, let's just make that glove to thumb. And then just making sure all those wrapping lines are on. And that would be it, right? So that would be my gesture for this stage. But then it's so much easier on this to just, you could go inside and start to develop whatever you want the interior of your surface to look like. Or if I want to add more, descriptive contour, I can use that guideline and then maybe start adding muscles by thinking, well, the lat could be like a little shape behind, or I could start to push the pec as a shape in there, or maybe we have the oblique kind of build out and then come in. It takes you to a faster look for finish, but I think it requires a bit more to get there, but just a bit more understanding. Let's try a back view. So head, what's the part? Remember from behind, it looked like a box because the head is so square. So this is the part behind in 3/4, slight forward tilt. So that would look like this to me. Slight 3/4 forward tilt, 3/4 being the back of the skull. And then I can't use my chin, so I'm gonna draw it across, and then I'm gonna imagine under the jaw. So that's the part resolved as having a gesture. So here, do that. So that's how I'm understanding the part, the gesture, and then the perspective. You could also just use the bottom of the skull, or you could use a wrapping line. You already get a little bit of a perspective from being underneath the jaw though. Next, neck. I'm gonna draw it like this. So I'd say it starts from here and there. That's my width. It's pushing forward. It's in front of the head. Here's the perspective. Shoulders, high to low. 1, 2, 3. On the back, I'm gonna use a S curve so that it's reflective more so of the spine. But each one of these is a C or S to describe and design the movement of this part. Pelvis looks higher on this side, so cut into your shape where you think that perspective would end. Now let's worry about maybe getting a better connection. So just overlapping these parts to that neck. This goes away. Perspective would be this stage. This goes forward. And then that becomes the perspective into the back of the neck. Pelvis is behind and under. So I'm saying that this side looks higher because I'm really actually in this looking at the line of the underwear, how it looks like it lifts to that side. What kind of view or leg would I have there? That looks like 3/4 back. So this one looks like an S. Sometimes I'll do something like this and then create this to help me see, all right, well, is this half? Does that look like it's proportionate to the top? That's my hardest challenge in this, is always just, when you work from part to part, I'm focused on the parts. It's harder to make those proportional decisions, especially after you've been doing the other one all day. So here would be the back of my leg and foot. It heels a little bit up. So we could show the same type of foot gesture that I did in the other approach. I think works pretty well for this too. That goes forward. And then on the other side, I don't think that would be a B. It looks more like the S again, but more a little bit bent. So I'm going to do that, straight, S shape I usually get by pushing the curve of the back. And then we have our ground and then foot. A fun homework assignment could even be that you take this approach, see somebody kind of in reference like I'm doing here, and then try to use the shapes, if you wanted to emphasize the form modification part to the gesture, to describe a different body type. Like draw this pose, but make the body type the brute character, or a sidekick character. That way you push or you challenge yourself to see a different type of design, but using a pose, right? Learning about the pose, the quality of the expression. Back, we could do, so I like to use the hatchet to think about the scapula. So it looks like that. So there's that. And then do my handle. So how wide, what's the connection? It goes there maybe. And then it comes back. So one on top of the next gives me that little bit of foreshortening or overlap that I want. Here's its perspective. Sometimes I break the arms up. Like they don't have to always be, and the legs can be the same. You don't have to make them a B or an S. There's room for you to do your own thing with this too, just as much as on the other one. And then the elbow to the forearm is this way. Do a couple C curves, and then we have let's do our glove shape. So part, gesture is bent, perspective is forward and then back. Axe handle on this side, don't see too much of it. And then I don't really see too much of the arm. So I'm just going to make a C curve. I think I see that much. And then the elbow would be lower than the other side. So it looks like it's in here. So maybe I'll start to think about this perspective, and then that would be moving away. So that one will be done. Be ready to either introduce light and shadow, or maybe you want to do like an early step where you come in and start to define maybe a little bit more of the anatomy or something better. This one's kind of back but 3/4. And then we have some profile shapes in here too. So profile of the head. So in the last two, I tried to break them down, the steps in my head, so you could see what I was thinking. This one, I'll just go right to it. Part, gesture, perspective. Part, gesture, perspective. Part, gesture, and then perspective will be going up towards the neck at the top, and then down towards the pelvis at the bottom. So back view is rib cage. I always give those two perspectives, just so I can show the transition up, or kind of the roll up into the shoulder neck area, and then turn down into the lumbar pelvis area. Pelvis. Can be think before going too much further just about creating some connections and overlaps. So just firming up my T's to make sure things feel like one's in front of the other. Don't want these parts to feel like they start to become too independent. This is in front of the neck. This is stretching. Okay, so then leg, either one. Let's do this. Where does it begin? Where does that part attach? What is its gesture? What is the perspective? Same thing here. Where does it start? How do I introduce the part and where? What is its gesture? And then can we play around with adding some wrapping lines as that perspective? So it'll be interesting to see what you think trying this approach out. Usually I find people really love one or love the other and prefer them. I would advocate that you use them both and kind of use them for different reasons. And when you have something that might require more shape, then use that, or you're just trying to work on a different sensibility in your work, use this one. You don't have to be team one or team the other. So here's my axe handle, and then that's going to come out. And these trying to aim for like this, right? So that I could build up and down for the muscle shapes on top. And then that turns. So this would be that more arrow-based or arrow-like design. Blows up, finger, hand, thumb, but really just kind of making the big glove. And that goes this way. Here, this side, part, where's the axe handle? Probably bring my rib cage up a little bit. Right, so this would just be, I think, normal part. Just firming up the way that you want those shapes to read or look. I'm still not kind of doing much to give this anything beyond the mannequin or kind of lay-in stage. So there's the upper arm there, S and a C curve for this one. And then let's just envelope where that hand is going to end. So again, it's like, somebody's wearing socks around the end of their wrist. And that would be it for me, right? Anything past this, I would start to design muscle shapes or start to think about light and shadow or including those types of things. But for my part to part and its breakdown, shape, gesture, perspective, or the application of this is at least 3 different versions to show you a contrast to the other style of gesture that we made in executing these different views here. In this course, what you're going to learn is how to pose your figures, how to think about the internal dynamics of your figures, really with a focus and emphasis on organizing your thoughts and making gesture something that doesn't have to be mysterious or ambiguous. So I'm giving it some structure, of course, and some steps. At the end of this course, you should come away with a couple different approaches to think gesture, and then I hope a broad enough understanding of the subject to make your own innovations on it. Check it out. It's at proko.com/Hampton. I'll see you there.